Yeah, let me start also with a quote that is put in one of the incubators and co-working spaces in India that is hosting more than 600 startups currently. I welcome you to the community of people who have decided that easy will no longer suffice. And I think this quote reflects the spirit of a whole movement, which is currently not only moving India, but I think a lot of the emerging economies, but also the global north, where a lot of young people are more eager to start up and start their own business than joining the corporate sector or joining the public sector, like maybe a couple of years ago when that were the jobs you would seek for. So today, what I want to talk about is how we believe the startup economy can contribute to inclusive growth. I have worked in the traditional development sector for 8 years, started with GIZ, the German Development Corporation, but 5 years working in India with a lot of enterprises and startups from the other side of the table, from the donor side, have really inspired to change the sides and to work in the entrepreneurial economy. So today at Intellecap, we work to help startups in India, but also in East Africa and in Indonesia. And what I want to talk about today is a bit how we believe the startup economy can contribute to a more inclusive economy. So what we are currently seeing in the world is a global movement of young people wanting to start up. And this is surely also inspired by the success stories that we are currently seeing. The unicorns, the startups that are worth more than 1 billion, the Ubers, but we see more of them now also coming up in the global south. So when I did a little bit of background research for this and tried to put that on a graph, it actually, we saw that more such businesses have come up in the last year, and we really see these success stories flourishing. So this is really just not happening in Silicon Valley, but more and more also in the global south, that we see these businesses growing. And this is really giving a lot of hope and motivation to the young generation to also start up and seeing that it's possible to start our own business and to lead it to a scalable and successful model. So while a couple of years ago we were looking at Silicon Valley and at the US and a lot of northern ecosystems, startup ecosystems, we more and more now see a lot of startup ecosystems and hubs coming up in the global south. This is the ranking of the most conducive ecosystems currently in the world, and we see that places like Singapore, Bangalore, Sao Paulo are now coming up on the map. But we also see that maybe the next generation of ecosystems might be in Africa, might be in Jakarta, might be in different global south countries. So if we, for example, look at Africa alone, we see that the amount of venture capital that has been going into the continent has been increasing in the last couple of years. You might have heard that Kenya is often called the Silicon Savannah of banking, with a lot of innovative business models, especially in the financial inclusion space, and a lot of tech incubators coming up in Africa right now, bringing very interesting innovations out that might point to the fact that Africa might be the next startup frontier on our map. So why does this really matter, and why are we talking about this in the context of inclusive growth? Well, we believe that it is the startup economy that can really contribute to economic empowerment. A recent study by the Kaufman Foundation has found out that even in the US today, it is the startup economy or startups that are leading to net job growth. So it is actually this new type of the economy that is leading to new employment opportunities, especially for the young generation. We also see that the startup economy, or we would argue that it's contributing to an increased social participation. More than ever before, young people want to start up. Again, taking the US, I think the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor has just recently come up with a data point saying that more than 60% of youth now want to start up and not join the corporate sector. So interesting, we see a whole different spirit of wanting to start up and start a business and participate in creating solutions and in contributing to shaping our society. And more than ever before, I would also argue, we see that drive to come up with social innovations, with innovations in sectors like healthcare, water, sanitation, energy, and really contributing with business models towards a social change. So India, where Intellecap is based, where I'm based, is currently one of the most dynamic startup ecosystems, fast growing. The last 2 years have been massive in terms of growth of startups. We have seen more venture capital going into India in the last year than ever before. We see suddenly the whole economy has shifted in the way that suddenly we have more capital and businesses can choose which venture capitalists they want to go to. So we really have a lot of innovations coming out and a very conducive ecosystem. And what are really the drivers for this? Well, on one hand, it's the technology, and it was never as easy as today to start a business. You have all the tools available. You can build on software and platforms that are there. You can copy and paste models that are somewhere else, adapt them. It is easier than before to actually start a business. At the same time, we see in India there's a high passion to really change and contribute to India's transformation. And it's also different than maybe a couple of years ago that really the young generation wants to contribute to a new India. And at the same time, we see the ecosystem is also evolving. A lot of incubators are coming up, co-working spaces, hubs, that are helping businesses with specialized services and help businesses to grow to the next stage. And as I said, the capital that is risk-taking has also been increasing over the last couple of years. We have impact investing as a specific niche of capital that is looking at businesses with a social mission increasing. So generally a pretty conducive environment and a lot of reasons to celebrate the startup economy. But there's always also a but, and that's what I'm coming to now. So actually, it is more than 50% of the enterprises that is not located in the startup hubs like Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi, where you have all these good incubators and co-working spaces and mentors. So it's actually a large proportion of the entrepreneurs that are outside these hubs and that hence lack access to this support. At the same time, we have capital available that is looking for businesses to invest in. So we really have that mismatch. So as Intellecap, over the last 12 years, we have been trying to fill that gap to create an ecosystem for entrepreneurs that are outside of startup hubs and really trying to help them with advisory, helping them with partnerships and helping them to develop innovations. We have different financial products, like in the sense helping with microfinance up to private equity. We have our own angel network that is helping businesses and social enterprises to raise capital. And we have a huge network that is linking businesses to investors and creating a platform for investors and enterprises. But we really realized over the last year that how can we actually scale our own services? I mean, we have reached hundreds of businesses now. We have facilitated investments, but still it's just a drop in the ocean. So how can we also scale our own ecosystem and reach more entrepreneurs that are outside the major hubs? How can we reach more scale, and how can we also use resources more efficiently? I mean, quality mentorship, investors that devote their time to mentor businesses are scarce. So how can we basically create a new ecosystem 2.0 that uses resources also more efficiently? So our innovation is to bring this physical ecosystem in the virtual world and create a virtual ecosystem. So the solution that I will be presenting now is a first attempt to create the virtual entrepreneurial ecosystem, leveraging technology to provide capital, but also mentorship and support to startups. So I let the video speak.
So you have a startup idea. It's groundbreaking and you are sure it's going to click. But what next? How do you take this idea and blow it up into a plan and then a pilot and then a business? What about incorporation? And oh, you need to test if this will work. And the money to make this all happen. Where do you go and what do you do? You need these answers right now and you need it where you are. If you relate to this, then Startup Wave is a new virtual incubation platform designed just for you. It's designed to take your startup from idea to investment. We want to democratize incubation and support thousands of startups just like yours and bring our services where you want them and when you want them. Intellecap designed and launched Startup Wave with the support of GIZ and DFID to address two big problems we see in incubation today. Did you know that over 90 to 95% of early stage startups that apply for incubation and angel funding get rejected and often without any support? And most incubators in India are concentrated in larger cities like Mumbai, Delhi and Bangalore, while 50% of the Indian startups are in smaller towns. Startup Wave is our ambitious initiative to leverage the power of networks, collaboration and technology to create a dent in these problems. We see an opportunity to look at traditional incubation support, which includes idea validation and feedback, mentoring, access to industry networks, business support, and connections to investors, and make these more flexible and relevant to you as a startup. At Startup Wave, we are opening up this box of support and realigning incubation to your unique needs as a startup based on where you are in your journey from idea to investment, and delivering these through a blend of online and in-person support. So how does it all work? Well, have you heard that it takes a village to raise a child? Similarly, we believe that it takes a community to help a startup grow, and we are backed by a powerful community of incubators, investors, corporates, and others. So as an entrepreneur using Startup Wave, you will get step-by-step roadmap to grow your business idea with in-person advice and the best of online content curated by experts. We also mean it when we say we are democratic. So at each step, we give you choices to build your own incubation roadmap. Startup Wave is supported by a growing network of leading incubators and investors. And we are tapping into Intellecap's relationship with 400 plus incubators, investors, and corporates from around the world to add to this. Come, join in a new movement in startup incubation. See you online at www.startupwave.co.
So over the last 1.5 years, we have worked with 400 enterprises and helping them to shape their business ideas into a business model. And now we are entering into a phase where we are really trying to offer virtual incubation also, which eventually will lead to investment. The vision is also to turn some of the transaction advisory and actually helping to raise capital and put that also on the virtual world and working very closely with investors and helping them to find the right investment opportunities through that platform, but that is still the vision. So as of today, we have, as I said, helped 400 entrepreneurs. We have a lot of businesses that come every month. Not everyone completes the journey. But we also have a lot of social enterprises that are part of the platform, women entrepreneurs that find it easier to access some of the support through the virtual world. And we work with a large network of investors and advisors that we have onboarded on the platform and that can bring quality support to businesses that normally don't have the access to that kind of support. So right now we are based in India. We want to now scale it to Africa as well, where we see a huge need for more incubation support. We have done a small pilot in Rwanda with an incubator there and with entrepreneurs there, but we really hope we can scale it up and eventually maybe make it a global platform. So as of now, we are a small team, but yeah, we know we are ambitious, but we hope we can make that grow. And with the support and encouragement of this forum here, we hope we can make it. So thank you very much.
So I love the paper. It's really interesting. I think Stefanie did a great talk. You know, it's a big project. It's ambitious, which is I think what this is all about, right? Thinking big and changing the world and stuff like that. It was also very clearly presented in terms of what they were trying to do and why it was an important aspect. And I think it was, it's both creative and interesting in terms of saying, given the fact that there's just a lot of entrepreneurs out there and, there's a lot of knowledge out there, how do we solve this sort of matching problem between entrepreneurs hungry for knowledge, lacking the kind of intellectual resources, that our MBAs take to second nature, and sort of get that in their hands. And clearly that's what they're really thinking about. And I sort of enjoyed thinking about it, but on the other hand, I was also told that I had no more than 8 minutes. So I figured rather than spending too many of my 8 minutes saying nice things, I would just sort of extrapolate from me saying 8 more minutes, 7.5 more minutes of nice stuff, and maximize the time being useful for you guys by thinking about issues and problems. But again, with no sense of trying to sort of minimize either the importance of the problem or the the creativity of a solution. So my sort of thought about this was saying, rather than saying my opinion, we do sort of like, this is American football, the beer companies has cold hard facts about the football. I was like, let's just sort of look at just the factual numbers about venture capital and sort of the entrepreneurial process and see what it tells us and sort of put it against some of these things and see where we stand. One thing we know is that it's still, even today, this is only through 2013, just because the venture data is so terrible that it sort of takes forever to compile. Even today, in this sort of globalized world, venture is still really a U.S. game, right? Yes, there's China and India there, but a lot of it is the sort of major developed economies. And you might say this is unfair. The U.S. has a really big economy. Let's look at this normalized by GDP per capita. And again, with the exception of Israel, which is sort of a weird case, we see that U.S. is sort of basically 3 times bigger than anything else, and that's certainly within the ranks of sort of leading things. India is not here because this is OECD. It would be sort of somewhere in the middle of a pack, somewhere around Japan or South Africa on a GDP per capita basis. So very skewed. Even when we look within the U.S., and we'd see the same thing as Stefanie hinted at, if we looked within India and almost everywhere else, it's extremely concentrated, right? So half the venture money is in 3 cities, here, San Francisco, and New York. And that's just part and parcel of a territory. Is extremely concentrated, focused kind of process. And you say, why is this? Is this just because of investors being, unimaginative, myopic or whatever? No, unfortunately not. It's really a reflection of the fact that that's where they made the money. So when you look at venture returns from the beginning of the industry, we see they made a lot more money in the U.S. than anywhere else. Again, if we sort of were to look at the rest of the world number and throw out Israel, which I think we have to asterisk, and China, which is really I think you can argue a little bit of a product of the bubble of the last couple of years, the numbers look a lot similar to Europe. In other words, there's sort of threefold differential in terms of what's going on. And it's not just simply, again, that it's just simply the U.S. is the right one. Even within the U.S., and I think we'd see this in a lot of other places, we see that this is just IPO rates rather than returns, but essentially the funds doing this stuff in San Francisco and Boston seem to do considerably better than the funds investing in other markets. And alas, when we sort of look at, this is from some stuff we did with MacArthur Foundation and the U.S. Department of Commerce, neither of which were overjoyed with our findings. But when you look at the sort of subset of funds which are explicitly doing impact investing with sort of less traditional markets, not really for financial returns, the rate of the success rate in terms of outcomes is pretty challenging. So this is essentially, we just have to sort of acknowledge that this is the challenge that we're up against and the issues we have to address, right? So we've seen this in the experience within the U.S., right, that essentially programs like Small Business Innovation Research, when they give money to companies located where there's already venture capital stuff going on, it seems to make a big difference for those companies opposed to matching firms. When they go and give the money in Idaho and Iowa, it doesn't seem to make much difference. Again, we wish it wasn't the case, but it is one of the unpleasant things. Shortly after the first election, Obama's first election, I got summoned into the National Economic Council for a little presentation. They were saying, we really want to help we've got this idea, we're going to sort of encourage venture capital in Detroit. It'll help venture capital, it'll help Detroit. And my view, which inspired them to call the Secret Service to escort me from the premises, is that it's a great idea to help Detroit, it's a great idea to help venture capital, but essentially encouraging venture capital funds in Detroit is going to basically do nothing for nobody. So that's really the challenge that we have to grapple with. Again, we could look at a lot of other measures. This is from a study of Startup Chile, where again, sort of well-regarded effort in a lot of respects, but when people have tried to really look carefully at whether this makes a difference using a regression discontinuity design, it's a little tough finding much effects there. So, given this backdrop, how do you think about this goal of boosting people in second and third tier cities? I'm certainly very sympathetic with it, saying that again, just like somebody in Boston has an access of resources which is far greater than most parts of the world, somebody sitting in Bangalore or Delhi is going to be able to tap into a network that people in a second or third tier city can do. But I guess I wonder whether it's best served helping people in place, or else sort of tapping into those sort of broader networks that exist around the in the country, in the hubs. This seems to be, whether we like it or not, a winner-takes-all business, where there seem to be a relatively small number of hubs in each country, in each region, that seem to be the focal things. So in a way, if one can find ways to build that interconnectedness between the local entrepreneurs in the second and third tier cities and other places, it might be helpful. I guess another question, which is really a challenge for you guys, is sort of thinking about, one of the real questions is, how much is enough in terms of mentoring, right? In other words, certainly one of the issues that we've seen, one of my hats is running the entrepreneurship group at the National Bureau of Economic Research, and we've had a whole series of studies done around training and mentoring of entrepreneurs in terms of how much difference does it make? And the general finding of these experiments is that it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. You'd like it to make a big difference, but it's not there. And one wonders about the the sort of quality and the quantity of stuff. And in particular, you say, are you better off sort of going for a broad swath with a lot of people, or sort of focusing the effort there? And I think some of the same question with the financing, saying are you better off is the goal, should it be 1,000 or 5,000, or should it be saying let's hit 300 people with enough funding to really move the needle in terms of what they are? It's not easy issues. It's a great effort. It's really creative and thoughtful in a lot of ways, but I figured I would at least give some food for thought for thinking about it. And again, I appreciate the chance to discuss and think about these issues.
Thanks very much, Josh.